picture of some leader, like you just know what you're looking at, even if someone gave it to you from like a country where you didn't actually like know the politics. If someone says to you, there's this political leader who's vowing to purge the communists and leftists who are like vermin within the confines of the nation, you just know immediately that's fascist rhetoric.
Absolutely. And everything about that speech was drawn actually from the history of fascism, because fascism started as a decentralized militia movement in Italy. And in both Italy and Germany, its first people were, the nucleus was veterans who wanted to bring the war home. And they turned their weapons and their hatred on their own population, on leftists. And Hitler started talking about Jews as parasites and as early as 1920. And Mussolini actually talked about having to kill rats and who are bringing Bolshevism from the East. So dehumanizing your targets is an integral part of fascist rhetoric.
And it's not just the rhetoric, right? There are these sort of audacious plans. At this point, they're plans. One of them is on to use the Insurrection Act, which is a pretty bad law in many ways in the U.S. government, an old law. His allies have begun mapping out specific plans for using the federal government to punish critics and opponents should he win a second term. The former president naming individuals he wants to investigate or prosecute. His associates drafting plans to potentially invoke the Insurrection Act on his first day in office to allow him to deploy the military against civil demonstrations.
Yeah, this is all the authoritarian playbook. And as you know, Chris, I've been writing about Trump and warning people since 2016. And my book, Strongmen, he's in it. He's at the end of a century of authoritarian history that starts with Mussolini. And so all of these things he wants to do are from some chapter of that long history.
Yeah, and he's always been honest about how much he admires. He talks about Xi Jinping in China. He likes that model much better. Like he's always contemptuous of democracy. He likes strongmen. He likes North Korea as a model of government.
Absolutely.
Like he's not shy about this. Here's my question for you. It seems to me pretty clear that a lot of this reporting is coming from Trump's people, and there's a little bit of it has a kind of like braggadocious feel to it, like a psyop. Like you libs are going to be, so you're first up against the wall when he gets reelected. And I'm balancing the desire to take seriously these plans, which are deeply unnerving and un-American, and also feeling like they're trying to make themselves seem scary.
Yeah, but that's what fascists do, too. And in all of my research, every time these people come to power, or before they come to power, when they come on the scene, they tell us who they are and what they're going to do, and people don't want to listen. Perhaps it's too upsetting. They don't want to take them seriously. So people thought Mussolini was just some kind of like, blusterer. And we don't take them seriously at our peril, and often it's when it's too late. People wake up and say, oh, I should have listened when Trump said he could shoot someone and not lose any followers in January 2016. Back then, he was telling us he was sympathetic to violence, capable of violence personally, and he would be loved for all of this. And he is loved for this. And he's been trying to re-educate Americans since 2016 to feel that violence is patriotic and justified. And that's now he's been very successful with the narrative of January 6th.
Yes, and of course we have to be clear here that, like, to the degree this was a more theoretical conversation before January 6th, it's not one after, right? I mean, like, this debate about, like, where does he fit in this line? Like, he really did try a coup. He really did whip up a violent mob and send them to the Capitol to try to try to sack it. He really did try to install himself against the will of the people. So all of this conversation, which you and I have talked about since 2016, post-January 6th, when he's saying, I'm going to pardon them, and he's signing the backpacks of people, that alone tells you what the intention is.
Absolutely. And by the way, Mussolini was the first but not the last authoritarian to pardon the thugs who helped him get to power. Because if you're having an autocratic government, you need lawless people and criminals in your ranks. And so pardoning not only indebts people to you, and they need to have people loyal to them, but it frees up the worst elements in society for government service. Pinochet in Chile, the dictator, he also pardoned human rights abusers. So when Trump started talking about pardons, I was like, oh, that's checking off the list.
Ruth Ben-Ghiat, thank you so much for joining us.